Hey, welcome to the Outbreak Zone. I'm Dan Arnold from Omaha, Nebraska, your lead outbreak specialist. In our pursuit to eradicate this unbilled outbreak, we brought together a team of some of the best unbilled process experts from around the North Central region. These people, Tammany Martinez Crawford from Phoenix, Adam Kavanaugh from Chicago, Mark Hamilton from St. Louis, and Mike Kelm from Portland, have worked diligently on a process to come up with solving this outbreak. Let's talk about the pain the outbreak has caused. Cough, cough. Yeah. Only 2 of 11 areas made our, which Kelly just killed us on, our 1.5% goal this past year. 2 of 11. The data clearly paints out that we have a significant issue. We have a significant outbreak of unbilled expense. So let's talk about gathering the facts. Like they said, there's the struggles of no one knows each other in our group, and we have to figure out how to get together. So we really had to start a process of just what is out there, what are the problems? So it started with our group discussion. It was our PowerPoints. It was our time on the WebEx. It was anything we could figure out to collaborate together and really dig in and find out what the real problems were. What did we assess they were? So phase 2 of that discovering the facts was interviewing other regions. Kelly mentioned the South region kills everyone in unbilled. 1.1% this past year. 1%, that's an entire 1% better than the 2.1% we ran. They understand the process, so why not look at the experts? Step 3, field testing. Right, so we can figure out what the South is doing, but we have a differing operating climate. We have different management structures, so we'll work in the North Central region. So we put our new information that we gathered from the South to clinical trials in the North Central region. And then, of course, we had to establish some best practices from these trials. Voila, amazing. 3-phase approach. This is our solution that we propose. Quarantine and isolation, diagnosis, and treatment. All 3 highly critical. And we're going to talk more about each one of those. All 3 very important to follow the exact process. This is definitely a process presentation. And we got one more, a kicker. Not just these 3. Who's going to implement these? Who's going to put them in place? The region czar, a newly created position at the region level. This person will be accountable for managing the process and making sure that everything is done correctly.
So quarantine and isolation, what is this? Well, it's the act of protecting the public from exposure to those who may have a disease or have a disease. I don't know about you, but that's how I feel when I receive my unbilled report and I have not made my goal. Given the competitive areas that we work in, I know my area is extremely competitive, no one wants to be at the bottom of these lists. We will even high-five each other when we get off the bottom of these lists. So what is this process? Our process is to begin the phases of quarantine and isolation. When translated, this means we're now identifying the areas and our branches that will start to go into this process. The time period may vary. It may be lengthy in the quarantine phase, or it may go down into a more extreme isolation status. This is where the AVP and the czar come into play. They will begin the process of communications with the quarantine group. This is very important. We want to make sure that they receive all of the support to avoid a negative experience. We want to ensure that we are giving support to our team members and the branches. This is not an I got you. This is something very important. So quarantine, what is it? Well, it's really two phases. First, we want to protect the operational as well as fiscal well-being of our branch. We want to make sure we don't continue down the road to this unbilled problem. Again, the duration and scope will vary. We all know we may have a one-off, we may have granular growth that affects this, but we want to ensure that we're now identifying particular issues or items that we can address. Isolation. We've now identified which branches are going to be placed into this isolation status. It may be one, it may be two, it may be all, but we've now identified. And we now need to provide them with interventions that will help not only cure, but hopefully prevent in the future. That's the goal. These groups are going to remain in isolation status until they've either raised their goals to where they should be so they can be removed from the program. But this is absolutely has to be the number one focus. The number one focus of a branch staffing team, including a recruiter, a scheduler, the branch manager. This needs to be the focus. And this will include weekly interventions. This could be video, it could be over the phone, it could even include face-to-face with the AVP at this point. We have two scenarios. So obviously we've now identified the areas that are now in quarantine status. They've missed their unbilled goal, but we need to look a little deeper, determine the branches that are really affected here. So once we've done that, we've identified one branch in the area who has not met their unbilled goal. I've been there. I've been there. So we're now identifying branches that have not made either their 1.5% goal or the goal that your particular AVP may have set for you. So everyone who is already doing a 1.5, beware. And we may be shooting lower. It's the concept of don't shoot for a B, shoot for an A, and you may still get a B. We've got to be shooting for the top here. So this group has now been placed in isolation status. Now they have been able to raise their goal above the level they needed to be at. They can now be removed from that. The second scenario, go back here, we have now the same branch who has missed their goal for 2 consecutive periods. They need to remain in this isolation status for a little bit longer. We now need to identify what it is that we're going to do, and that's when we move to the diagnosis phase.
The diagnosis phase is going to be the most critical phase to this entire process. Failing to properly diagnose the problems that exist will not lead to any long-term solutions. You'll just keep having the same problems over and over again. Because of the importance of this entire process, a new subject matter expert will be implemented at the region level. This is where we enter in the czar. He or she will be monitoring weekly processes and unbilled situations. If he sees a sign of an outbreak, he'll immediately reach out and try to contain it. He or she will have a hands-on in the field role with a focus solely on unbilled expenses, controllable costs. He'll have the focused set of responsibilities working solely on improving controllable cost numbers. He'll work synergistically with the AVP and the branch, and even get down to the recruitment and HR functions. If after 30 days the czar sees that there's an issue and he's identified an outbreak, he'll reach out to that AVP, he'll reach out to that branch manager. They'll start discussing situations to fix the problem. If after 60 days they're still not meeting or exceeding their budget, that czar will come to the office and sit down with the AVP and branch manager and start evaluating the structure and the processes. If after 90 days they haven't seen drastic improvement or they've met or exceeded their goals, that's when we bring in the region president, and the region president will decide further action. The next step will be your treatments.
Treatment, nothing more than a technique or process to solve a certain problem. Different things we came up with were 32-hour schedules, a hiring machine, training partnership, area staff meetings, orientation, staffing team incentives, and area development plans. First one is 32-hour schedules. Is this a new concept? For those who've been in business, no. But like Kelly said, we're bringing a lot of people from the outside of the business. And I've seen people, you sit there and say, okay, we talk about 168s, 336s, 56s, 128s, and new people are looking at you going, what's he talking about? We're talking about schedules. A lot of people don't understand what we're talking about. The 32-hour schedule allows for clients or contracts to staff their own openings with an internal flex officer staff. On a 168-hour contract, you could have 4 people that you have 4 built-in flex officers. Also, we have sites that require specialty training before they even get on site. We have some that have to go through background checks, drug tests, specialty training before they can even start training on the site. We can't just put anybody in these schedules, in these openings. Even flex officers, unless you have flex officers specially trained for that, what happens if that flex officer is pulling over here? Well, this allows you to do it internally before you have to go outside the contract. This is where we can look at, the czar can come in. They can show a scheduling manager how to cluster smaller contracts. Take a 128 over here, a 56 over here, a 32, a 48, cluster them to where you can get into that and you can create 32-hour schedules and you cross-train everybody within that cluster to work at each one of those accounts. Sample schedule, it's a 168, where you have one person at 40 hours and 4 people at 32. Well, I've heard recruiters say, well, I can't hire for a 32-hour shift. I can't hire for a 32-hour shift. It's hard to get people to do that. Well, it's a matter of changing our culture and changing our mindset. If you did a traditional, I'm going to put 4 people at 40 and 1 person at 8, what's easier to hire for, 32 hours or an 8-hour? Oh, I'll give you 8 hours here, but then we'll just bounce you over here and here. That works well, doesn't it? This is where we did a case study. In Omaha, this is an 1,800-hour week contract. They went to a 32-hour model, and over a year period, they reduced their unbilled overtime by 0.2%, saving $6,000 in 1 year. If you extrapolate that out to a 3,600-hour week portfolio, you have the potential to add $12,000 a year to your bottom line without adding one single sale. Next thing we look at is a hiring machine. What's the number one cause of overtime? Not enough people. You can never have enough people. You're never fully staffed. I've gone to recruiters and scheduling managers and they say, oh, we don't have any open schedules. We don't have any open. We have everybody hired. No, we don't. We've all been there. It's 4 o'clock, Friday afternoon. Somebody calls up, I quit. Now we got to fill a 6 p.m. shift with anybody we can get. Our scheduling manager has 2 hours to cover it. We're not going to go say, oh, George over here has got 24 hours. No, we're going to go to our go-to person, and the one we know when we call them, they're going to go. They may already be at 56 hours a week. Doesn't matter. We need to cover it. It's not McDonald's. We can't go short-staffed. Or the NCC calls and says, oh, we need 24-hour coverage from now until whenever. The recruiters and schedulers have to work as a team. It is imperative that they work as a team. That way they have constant communication with each other. They can talk to each other. Schedulers can say, hey, look, I know this is coming up. We need to hire for this. Branch managers can be predictive also when they get into that team. Say, hey, we've got new contracts coming up. We need to be ready for this. I just sent an email to my HR person. Hey, guess what? We just picked up 740 hours today. Starts on April 1st. We got to start hiring. You know, and they're like, oh, great. We've got more to hire for. The other thing is we look at a 1 to 500. The 1 to 500 is 1 flex officer to every 500 hours of coverage. When we reached out to the South, they said several things about the 32-hour schedules. That was one of their number one things. And also the hiring, it was a huge thing for them, constantly hiring. You heard Kelly talk about it earlier. But we look at it and we get the recruiter and schedulers and BMs or teams. Not only that, the recruiters and schedulers have to go to the sites. They have to know what they're hiring for. I don't know how many times I've had somebody quit because they were hired. We spent a lot of time, money, and effort getting them hired, send them out to the site, and they call up and said, I quit. I didn't know it was going to be outside. I didn't know it was going to be cold in the wintertime and hot in the summertime. I thought it was going to be air conditioned. You know, they didn't know what they were hiring for. Or schedulers put the wrong person in the wrong person in a very high visibility site, and it causes problems. This is where the czar can come in, work with the teams that are affected, and look at what those problem sites are and assess what's the problem with the site. Why are we having problems? And then make suggestions on how to do that. Last one is a training partnership. This was done in the downtown Chicago office. It goes back to training. You heard Kelly talk about it earlier. We do training when there's a problem. Well, why not be proactive in it? We go to clients every year for a 3 to 5% increase just to give higher wages to our officers and recover PT&I or SUI or whatever it may be. They see no real value in that increase. They just know their bill's going up and they don't see anything. We don't talk about training until there's a problem or when we get into it, we're selling a client and they're asking us, what's your ongoing training? What are you doing here? What can you do? We don't normally do a lot of training because it costs us money, a lot of money out of pocket. Or we get into it when there's a problem and the client's yelling and screaming at you. Now we're spending money we didn't budget for. So what we're looking at doing is recouping part of that training cost. We go into a training partnership with our client. What we do is we go and charge back $5 an hour to our client for training. Instead of us picking up the entire tab for the bill, we're picking up a partial tab of it. The client's picking up the other half. We cap that at 1.5% of total spend for the year. Then we put another 2% on it just to recover any PT&I or SUI increases for the year. We get a 3.5% increase. The client sees a return on their investment. They see that they got a better trained officer. We're not getting into reactive training, and we don't have as many problems. The czar comes in and can work with the region training team to develop training programs for BDMs and BMs on how to present this and sell this to the clients. In this example that we had from downtown Chicago, we have a 168-hour client. Billing rate's $18 an hour. Their annual spend's $157,000. We go for a 4% increase every year, and it's over $6,000. What does this client see for that investment? Nothing. But under the new plan, the increase would be 3.5%. We eat part of it, they eat part of it. We still don't, our unbilled for training goes down a little bit. They only get a $5,500 increase, but in that $5,500, that 1.5% allows for 400 hours a week, or 400 hours a year in training back to the client.
So one of the most important dialogues between the czar and the AVP will center on communication between the area and the branch. In order for our branches and our areas to be successful, we must have a foundation of support, communication, action, and accountability. So how do we achieve this? The area weekly staff meetings. I realize many of you already have these meetings. Many of you have probably been doing them for a long time. But just yesterday, I heard an AVP say that he was looking for a way to further improve his meetings, get people engaged. He added music to the beginning of these meetings. It seems simplistic, but the point is that he was looking for a way to improve this process, and that's the point of this presentation. AVPs, recruiters, scheduling managers, area coordinators, branch managers should all attend these meetings. We want everybody to be part of this process. We want everybody to be involved in this communication. Obviously, Unbilled will be the focus, but this will give the opportunity for the AVP to discuss any operational aspects or efficiencies that they see fit as best for their area. We mentioned Unbilled as a topic. You can talk about all of your call-offs for the week, scheduling issues, hiring and recruitment progress, organic growth. That 14 new positions that you have with that new account that starts in a couple weeks, that'll be an important topic to discuss at this meeting. If the czar and the AVP feel like this is something that needs to be implemented in the area or something that needs to be refined, it will be implemented in the first 30 days. Another area that we feel could be broadly improved is our employee orientation and onboarding. Our goal is to welcome and educate incoming officers on Securitas policies, program, and procedures. And we want a more personalized process. You can see from the case study in the Phoenix branch, 2014 resulted in a 27% increase in hiring, while they also experienced a 5% reduction in terms. They attribute this to success, to best practices in their onboarding and training. How do they do it? Every Friday, HR will send out a schedule of candidates that will be attending the next week's class, and along with their availability. Branch managers and scheduling managers will meet with all of those new candidates and make a decision on whether they're a good fit for the site. They have one instructor delivering a consistent message to all new candidates. Here you can see an example template that could be used in your area. Finally, My Rewards points will be issued to all new hires. The goal of this is to provide a positive foundation possible for our new hires and to also help promote retention. This slide is from the Great Plains. Beautiful. Makes you want to move there, huh? So how do we incentivize our scheduling managers and our recruiters? The Staffing Team Incentive Plan. This was an idea derived from the Great Plains. It's a program that's paid out quarterly and is self-funded. The award comes from savings generated by the scheduling manager and the recruiter. Simple example, if Q1 was billed at 1.8 and Q2 was billed at 1.5, the bonus incentive will come from the difference. The company receives 80% of the cost savings benefit, and the scheduling manager and recruiter will receive 20% of that benefit. It's then split equally between the two. This payout could be several $100s or more, just depending on what the savings ends up being. Successful implementation of this plan will result in cost savings to the company and compensation and retention to those roles that have historically had higher turnover. We'll begin a case study in the second quarter of 2015 in the Great Plains area. This case study will involve a 6-month time frame in which we expect to see a 0.2 to 0.3 savings of monthly unbilled expense. Area and Development Plan. This is my favorite of all of the treatments. If an area is facing unbilled challenges, there's some key questions that they need to ask. If a specific branch is experiencing high unbilled, why? And what is being done to correct it? Is there an action plan in place? What are the KPIs? And maybe most importantly, how is the branch manager being held accountable in his portfolio, his or her portfolio? There's a 30-day timeline that will take place where the AVP will conduct analysis that involves structure, people, and processes. This will be a collaborative effort with the czar, and they will find out what ideas or processes are best suited for their area. The czar will not only provide accountability perspective, but one of objectivity, providing feedback and offering insight. This is not just a guideline, but this is the foundation for measuring your success.
Hey, one more time with the shiny-haired bald dude. Sorry about that. All right, let's reiterate a little bit. $52 million over the past 5 years. $11 million annually, including over $11 million this past year, all in unbilled expense at $11 million, basically thrown into the trash. So when we found our efficient processes, again, we were directed towards the south, right? But it really comes down to the accountability managing and the culture. Their processes are rigidly followed. So that's where we have to go. It is highly important that we get this region czar implemented as soon as possible, because it starts with the people, Then it goes to the processes. We need the expert in place. We've got to challenge our culture a bit. 1.5 is the target in 4 years, I've always heard, so there's numbers out there that we all manage to. And we probably all heard 1.5 commonly. We know that's got to shift. So what if we looked at this process? Why not manage it to 0? Why 1.5? Why not shoot for the moon? So we have to absolutely keep working on changing our culture. Starts with implementation of a new person to help and assist with the branch managers, the AVPs, and everyone in this process because they have so many things on their plate, and this is such a big challenge. And it comes from accountability to ourselves. I mean, we really have to understand that this is just not accepted part of our industry going forward. Unbilled has to be eliminated. The time is now. It's been too many years, and we haven't fixed it. It's time. How about our outlook? So from projections from the savings from all the processes, getting czar in place, and finding these treatments, we estimate somewhere in the first full 12 months of implementation, we can make a decent, significant impact. $3 million potentially, maybe more. All because we have the right person, we have the right processes, and we rigidly move forward, adjusting the culture and the way we look at Unbilled. We need you, we need everyone in this room, we need this group, all the leadership. Let's end this outbreak.